In Activity 62, we're going to think about and study another part of this whole way the Supreme Court has understood the 14th Amendment that is extremely significant, and it has to do with the way the Supreme Court has handled the Bill of Rights. And you can see, just as an example, I give the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, etc. As you study the Bill of Rights and think about the Bill of Rights, I would suggest to you that its purpose at the time and thereafter was to prevent the federal government from becoming a tyranny. That's one major, I would say the major purpose of the Bill of Rights, was to put some very, very clear and unmistakable limits on the federal government that would provide additional protection to prevent the federal government from violating our basic rights of life, liberty, and property. It does another thing, and that is to, especially in the First Amendment, protects the right of self-government. In other words, when the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, that is making it clear that Congress can't do that, and that making clear that only the state governments can do that. So all laws concerning religion, speech, and press will be handled by the state governments, where the people will have the most input and be able to have the laws the way they think is right and just. So keeping the federal government out of it. And so also think about the First Amendment as protecting the right of self-government, in addition to the way the other amendments protect life, liberty, and property. You can see in letter A that Madison is explaining here why there was the Bill of Rights added to the Constitution. There was a concern that the limits were not safely defined, and all of the rights indicated a jealousy of federal power, which means a mistrust of federal power, and an anxiety to multiply securities against the constructive enlargement of them. I include this here because you can see that the goal here was to put an extra, we'll take the 14th Amendment out for a moment, just to put additional barriers here to keep the federal government within its limits, kind of putting extra bars on the cage, so to speak, to keep the federal government within its limits. Oops. And also to preventing a constructive enlargement of them. Constructive used here means to prevent the federal government from expanding its power by giving new meanings, new and different meanings to the words of the Constitution than the people had who agreed to it. So you're trying to find ways to keep the federal government from jumping over its bounds. I add that there because we've seen that's precisely the way the federal government has increased its power outside of the amendment process by a constructive enlargement of their powers. But we'll come back to that later. Letter B is just kind of surprising to us because we don't think this way. We've never been taught it. But you can see Jefferson emphasizing in these 3 bullets of letter B that, Congress has no right to control freedom of the press, but the states do. We've always insisted that the states have power to control freedom of the press, and they have the exclusive right to do so. And the logic of that is it emphasizes self-government. Somebody has to make laws concerning the press. It should be the state governments because that's where we have the most input. And then in the second bullet, no power to prescribe any religious exercise or assume authority in religion. Any religious discipline has been delegated to the general government. It must then rest with the states. So any law concerning religion will be made by the state governments, again, because of the right of self-government. This is what is emphasized in the 3rd bullet, where Jefferson speaks of all these rights of the First Amendment: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press. These are reserved to the states to make laws concerning religion, speech, and press. And the reason we did this is because, in Jefferson's words, we wanted to reserve to ourselves the right of judging how far the licentiousness of speech and of the press may be abridged. In other words, where to draw the line, how narrowly to draw that line in speech and press will be decided by the representatives of the people in each state who are going to live under those laws. So again, emphasizing the right of self-government. In letter C, Madison is emphasizing his understanding also in 1798, talking about, and this has to do with the Alien Sedition Acts that were current at that time. Madison is saying, look, liberty of the press is sacred. It ought to be left where the Constitution has left it. Where has the Constitution left it? In the hands of the states. The states have complete power on the subject. And when Congress legislates, it ought to have confidence in the states. In other words, let the federal government stick to its powers and leave the states to legislate in the areas where we have reserved powers to the states. And when the states legislate, they have to trust the federal government to exercise its powers properly. And that's what our system is based on. Notice that if this stops happening, Madison says, our government is gone. What he means by that is that our system requires this division of powers, and if the federal government just begins going into this area, we no longer have self-government, constitutionally limited government, we no longer have federalism, and that's what our system of government is all about, and that will be destroyed if the federal government is permitted to go beyond its limits.